You know, we've been doing the best sets, and the best waves, and all that great stuff, but somebody's got to bite the bullet and examine the things about Bionicle that really aren't all that great. Fortunately, I'm the best man for the job. Hello everybody, I'm Meso, and welcome to the top 10 worst Bionicle sets. Kicking off the list at number 10, we've got a fairly recent addition to the Bionicle line, Skull Scorpio. This set has been the source of many debates and a ton of controversy. Admittedly, I personally love the set, and think he's a worthwhile addition to Bionicle Gen 2. Objectively though, he's got some pretty severe flaws. His color scheme's pretty loud, and some people may not appreciate his mix of transparent shades. His legs are 100% immobile, and feature no posability whatsoever, causing the set to be forever locked into roughly the same general pose. Finally, his tail, while cool in design, breaks up the set's aesthetic due to its heavily technic-reliant build. Honestly though, it's really the tail that saves this set from not being higher on the list, because while it does look pretty terrible, the function that it creates is pretty excellent. Unfortunately, it wasn't excellent enough to keep Skull Scorpio off this countdown. Next up at number 9, we've got Bionicle Generation 1's final Titan set, Toa Matanui. The only thing keeping this set so low on the list is his complexity, which admittedly he does have. He's a large set, very well built in some areas, and if Bionicle was going to have a final Titan set, it is pretty appropriate that this guy should be the tallest one ever released. Unfortunately, there really isn't much else positive to speak of here. This set's design is a mess, with armor that doesn't even cover the figure all that well in many places, an incredibly awkward looking construction, and a combination of many different colors that really do not end up looking visually appealing in the least. The fact that it retailed for $50 only worsens the deal. Gold star for effort, Matanui, but maybe you need to go back to sleep. Coming up next at number 8 is Toa HEWKI Mari. Oh HEWKI, what happened to you? Barring the shift in your color scheme, you were doing so well in 2006. Out of the Toa Mari, which were already controversial enough, this guy really takes the cake for featuring several design choices that are questionable at best and terrible at worst. Awkward proportions, yet another redesign of his color scheme, an uninteresting torso build, the lack of a hand on his right arm. Actually, speaking of which, basically the entire right arm, because those obnoxious shoulder blades limit his posability quite a lot, especially in tandem with his strangely wide mask design. I'm thinking LEGO probably should have gone back to the drawing board with this one. The number 7 pick has been a source of much controversy between LJ and I for quite a long time, but in the end, the Borak Va had to end up here sooner or later, to my great dismay. They're a pretty bizarre wave of sets just in concept alone. Miniature creatures that vaguely resemble Borak, that waddle around, have no personality, and exist only to bring Borak their Krana. As far as the sets go, they're not the best things in the world. Their function, if you can even call it that, constantly forces them to stand extremely hunched over because if you try to put them into an upright position, their Krana will fall out of their backs all the time unless you get extremely lucky. In addition, due to using the MATORAN feet, they don't have knees. The only direction their feet can go is side to side. This means that their only form of movement is waddling along, and it looks really strange. I guess it's cool that they sold for only $3, because honestly, they're not worth much more than that. Taking the number 6 spot, we have Nidiki's expert-level partner in crime, the fearsome dark hunter, KREKKA. This guy is, to be honest, kind of a train wreck. He pulls off the brutish look well enough, but man, he's got no elbows, the area surrounding his head is awful when it comes to posability, and the torso design is pretty atrocious. It sticks out, appears cluttered and unfinished, and generally looks awkward. In fact, that word pretty much describes KREKKA in his entirety. He's just awkward. Throw on a superfluous function that really only serves to allow him to turn his head from side to side, and it turns his torso armor with his head, so that's pretty laughable. We've got ourselves one of the worst sets released. That being said, KREKKA was not the worst Titan set Bionicle produced. That honor goes to our number 5 pick, Umbra. This guy has gone down in history as being one of Bionicle's stranger sets, but unfortunately, he's also one of its worst. The attempt to be unique by adding his roller skate feet ends up falling flat on its face, much like Umbra will if you attempt to roll him across the ground with anything less than perfectly straight legs. His stability is awful, and if you actually want him to hold a pose, then you have to pose him with meticulous care. His flaws extend beyond his roller skates, though. His neck construction limits head posability. The design of his staff requires extensive disassembly if you want to give him freely moving arms, instead of a simple rearrangement of parts. And his color scheme is bizarre, and unfitting for a being whose name literally means the darkest part of a shadow. Of course, I guess Umbra will be the darkest part of some kind of shadow, as he sits, unloved, at the bottom of the storage containers of anyone who bought him, assuming he's not scrapped for parts first. You should have figured our number 4 pick was going to show up sooner or later. We would be remiss if we did not mention Gali Mystica in this list. The Toa Mystica are almost unanimously despised in the Bionicle fandom for being unfaithful representations of the Toa Mata, ditching many of their color schemes and design traits entirely. Gali Mystica, though, is by far the worst. Just look at her. I honestly don't even know where to begin. There's a ludicrous amount of silver in proportion to her primary color, which is mostly reduced to a secondary shade, except for her mask. And oh man, what a mask it is. Often derided as one of the worst Bionicle G1 masks, the KREKKA of 2008 just looks terrible, and has earned the nickname Waffle Eye from the community over the years. Similarly to Onua, the only offensive weapon Gali receives is a Ninra Ghost Blaster. Unlike Onua, however, who has a massive shoulder-mounted shield and an incredibly large new piece to accentuate his launcher, all Gali gets is a tiny scope. Yeah, Gali Mystica is an atrocity. As we move into the final 3, what could be worse than Gali Mystica, you may ask? Well, we'll start off with our number 3 pick, the Rahaga. Another wave of clone sets make the list, and these guys are something to behold. There's absolutely nothing interesting about these guys. They're short, they recycle most things in their design from prior Bionicle sets like the Rakshi heads and staff pieces, as well as Borak feet. Their sole innovation is Rotuka spinners. Unlike the Toa Horika, however, who are able to bend their knees in order to angle their Rotuka spinners so they can use them in an offensive capacity, the Rahaga find it pretty difficult to do that due to their stubby, pre-bent limbs and lack of any real useful articulation. They're tiny, they're awkward, they're generally uninteresting, and they bring very little new to the table. Their only saving grace, much like the Borak Va before them, is their $4 price tag. They're cheap, in both senses of the word. I ask you to please bear with me, as this next one will require a little bit of elaboration. The next set on our countdown is a bit of a special case, but I think SKRALL of the Bionicle Stars wave earns his spot regardless. Mostly everybody at TTV pretty much agrees that the Bionicle Stars were not the best way Bionicle could have been sent off. There were problems with all of the sets in the wave, problems at the very core of their designs. Why then are we not including the entirety of the Bionicle Stars wave as the number 2 spot? Simple. They can't really be classified as clone sets, so we cannot include the whole wave. Because SKRALL and Rakshi, specifically, break from the formula slightly and attempt to go out on their own and try a little bit of variety, featuring a ever so slightly unorthodox way of making a torso with this building style. Does it work? Not in the least. It falls short in basically every conceivable way. This design causes not only an open socket, but an open ball joint as well, all for the purpose of a slightly extended neck. I must ask you, why even bother? Additionally, his obnoxiously large shoulder armor affects posability even worse than HEWKI, as both blades have the potential to clash with each other, as well as his extremely long helmet design. This guy looks simply terrible, and it's pretty unfortunate that he was part of Bionicle's send-off wave. And now, as we announce the absolute worst of Bionicle's 11-year run, I'd like to paraphrase the wise words of Halo Reach by saying, from the beginning, you knew the end. From the moment you heard my voice at the beginning of this countdown, many of you could probably presume which set I was going to pick as my least favorite. That great honor goes to the MATORAN, but specifically, Solek. The MATORAN build perfectly represents everything that went wrong with the later years of Bionicle Generation 1. It took away the functions and complexity of design that Bionicle had been known for its entire lifespan, in favor of large, specialized chunks of plastic, pre-bent limbs that could not articulate in the slightest, and, in the case of the MATORAN, obnoxious large heads that protruded from the neck to a crazy degree. These problems persisted across numerous waves of Bionicle in the future, including the MATORAN Agori and Bionicle Stars. The basic formula even spilled over into Hero Factory. Now, the basic build is shared among these waves, so all of them automatically receive honorable mentions in this countdown. The Agorian Stars, however, had certain sets that at least occasionally broke from the simplistic design to attempt something with a modicum of creativity. I'm thinking of sets like Tarduk, sets like Zesk, even SKRALL and Rakshi to a degree, and if you want to go from the 08 wave, the Shadow Matoran have Radiac, and he tried to do something. The MATORAN, however, consisting of Tanma, Solek, and Photok, do not. They are all standard figures without any spark of creativity to them at all. What makes Solek worse than the other two, then, you may ask? Simple. His build may remain the same, but at least Tanma and Photok have vibrant color schemes, featuring colors that had only recently begun to come back to the forefront, such as lime green and orange. Solek goes so far as to take away the color of light or transparent blue that fans had become accustomed to seeing with white-armored characters for years, and replaces it with gray. Just gray. Nothing else. Nothing else to make the color scheme stand out more. Nothing else to set it apart from the crowd. Just gray. His color scheme is the most dull thing imaginable. His build lacks complexity and any sense of value or merit, and for this reason, Solek is the worst Bionicle set ever released, although the MATORAN Agori and Bionicle Stars all trail very closely behind him. That being said, these were just our thoughts. What are yours? Post your own top 10 worst Bionicle sets in the comments below, and feel free to continue the discussion on the TTV Message Boards at board.ttvpodcast.com. I'm Meso, and I thank you very much for watching.